The crimson glow of Zarian Prime's twin suns cast long shadows across the landing platform as Captain Marcus Reed guided his diplomatic vessel through the planet's shimmering atmosphere. The Peacekeeper settled onto the crystalline landing pad. With practiced precision, its engines cooling with soft hisses that echoed through the alien spaceport, Marcus ran a hand through his sandy brown hair. Checking his reflection in the darkened navigation screen one final time, 3 weeks of deep space travel had left him with stubble along his square jaw and tension lines around his green eyes, the scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone. A memento from the Titan mining wars seemed more prominent in the alien light filtering through the cockpit. Another day, another first contact, he muttered, straightening his Earth Coalition dress uniform. The mission briefing had been sparse. Established trade relations with the Valeri, a species known for their advanced biotechnology and complex social hierarchies. What the briefing hadn't mentioned was their reputation for territorial behavior. The welcoming committee awaiting him at the bottom of the ramp defied every expectation. Instead of the formal diplomatic entourage he'd prepared, a single figure stood in the center of the platform. A Valeri female whose mere presence commanded attention from 50 meters away. Her skin was a deep violet that seemed to shift and shimmer with each movement. It's like starlight on dark water. Form-fitting armor of midnight blue and silver traced. The elegant curves of her athletic frame bearing the scars and scratches of countless battles. Her hair was silver white, woven into intricate braids that framed features both alien and breathtakingly beautiful. But it was her eyes that captured Marcus, completely luminous amber orbs that regarded him with intelligence. Curiosity, and something that made his pulse quicken despite himself. "Captain Reed," she said as he approached, her voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed to resonate in his chest. "I am Commander Nix, Stellaris of the Valeri Defense Corps. I have been assigned as your liaison during your stay on Zarian Prime." Marcus extended his hand in the traditional human greeting. "The pleasure is mine, Commander. I look forward to working together." Instead of taking his offered hand, Nix placed her fist against her chest in what he assumed was a Valeri salute. Her amber eyes never left his face, studying him with an intensity that made him feel suddenly exposed. "The formal reception has been postponed until tomorrow evening," she continued. "I am to escort you to your quarters and familiarize you with our customs." As they walked through the spaceport, Marcus became acutely aware of the attention they were receiving. Other Valeri, particularly the females, tracked his movement with undisguised interest. Some made subtle gestures he couldn't interpret, their violet-hued faces bearing expressions that seemed almost predatory. "Commander," he said quietly, "is there something about my presence here that I should know about?" Nix's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Human males are rare on Zarian Prime. Your species' physical characteristics are considered highly appealing to many Valeri females." "Oh," Marcus managed, feeling heat creep up his neck. "I see." They boarded a sleek transport that whisked them toward the capital city's towering spires. Through the transparent dome, Marcus marveled at the organic architecture that seemed to grow from the landscape. It's a testament to Valeri harmony with their environment. "Tomorrow we begin joint military exercises," Nix explained, though her tone remained carefully neutral. "Your ship will be integrated into our defense grid while trade negotiations proceed. You'll be working directly with my tactical unit." "Exercises weren't mentioned in my briefing," Marcus said, frowning. "My orders were strictly diplomatic." "Plans evolve, Captain," Nix replied coolly. "The Krillian raiders have been testing our outer defenses. Your coalition has agreed to provide support." Commander Nix Stellaris had faced enemy fire, led tactical strikes against Krillian raiders, and negotiated with hostile alien species. But nothing had prepared her for the way her body responded to the human captain. At her to claim him, to mark him as hers before another female could challenge her. Right. The biological imperative was overwhelming. She'd studied human physiology extensively in preparation for this assignment. Their similarities to Valeri were striking. Bipedal, warm-blooded, carbon-based, but their cultural practices around mating and bonding were frustratingly complex. Humans seemed to prefer elaborate verbal courtship rituals over the direct, instinctual approach of her people. The diplomatic reception hall gleamed. under floating bioluminescent organisms that drifted near the vaulted ceiling. Marcus stood beside her at the entrance, resplendent in his formal Earth Coalition uniform. The midnight blue fabric with silver trim accentuated his broad shoulders and lean physique. Nyx found herself struggling to maintain professional composure. "Stop fidgeting," she murmured as he tugged at his collar. "Easy for you to say," Marcus replied. "I feel like I'm being evaluated for purchase." Nyx's violet skin darkened slightly at his words. He wasn't wrong, several females were. Indeed, assessing his worth as a potential mate, the fact that he was human only made him more exotic and desirable. Captain Marcus Reed of the United Earth Coalition and Commander Nyx Stellaris of the Valeri Defense Corps, announced the herald. As they entered the hall, Nyx immediately spotted the threats. Svelb Commander Vex Corin approached with predatory grace, her deep purple skin marking her as nobility. Behind her trailed several junior officers, all eyeing Marcus with unmistakable hunger. Commander Stellaris Vex purred, though her amber eyes remained fixed on Marcus. Is this the human pilot we've heard so much about? Perhaps he would benefit from a more experienced guide to Valeri customs. Nyx felt her hackles rise, literally. The bioluminescent patches along her armor began to pulse faster, betraying her agitation. "Captain Reed is under my direct supervision, Subcommander. His schedule is already determined." Vex smiled, revealing teeth slightly sharper than human norm. "Of course, but should the captain desire additional cultural education, my quarters are in the Eastern Spire." She reached toward Marcus's arm. What happened next was pure instinct. Nyx stepped between them, placed herself directly in front of Marcus, and began the ancient ritual of claiming. She pressed her face against his neck and shoulder, rubbing her scent glands along his skin in deliberate, possessive movements. Her hands gripped his waist as she marked him thoroughly, leaving no doubt about her intentions. Marcus stood frozen, his hands instinctively moving to her waist knot, pushing her away, but holding her with surprising gentleness. His heart rate accelerated, and she could smell the spike of adrenaline and arousal in his scent. Vex's eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. Without another word, she turned and departed with her entourage, all of whom now regarded Nyx with newfound respect and wariness. When Nyx finally stepped back, Marcus's green eyes were dark with confusion and something deeper. "What exactly just happened?" "I marked you," she said simply. "You're under my protection now." Lieutenant Jace Torres had served under Captain Reed for 3 years, long enough to recognize when his commanding officer was in over his head. The message Marcus had sent from Zarian Prime was professional enough on the surface, but Jace could read between the lines. His captain was dealing with more than standard diplomatic protocol. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic quarters' private wing, Marcus paced the crystalline walls of his assigned suite. The lingering scent of Nyx's marking, something like starlight, and midnight flowers seemed to cling to his skin despite multiple showers. Every time he caught a whiff of it, his body responded with an intensity that defied logic. A soft chime announced a visitor. Nyx entered without waiting for permission, carrying what appeared to be a bottle of violet liquid and 2 crystal glasses. Valeri custom dictates that after acclaiming, both parties should share Stellaris wine to formalize the bond, she said, setting the bottle on the table with careful precision. "Formalize what exactly?" Marcus asked, though he made no move to stop her as she poured the shimmering liquid. "Among my people, what occurred tonight carries significant meaning. It's not easily undone, nor would I wish it to be." She handed him a glass, her fingers brushing his with deliberate intent. Marcus studied her face. Noting the way her bioluminescent markings pulsed in patterns he was beginning to recognize as emotional indicators. "And if I were to say I don't understand Valeri customs well enough to consent to whatever this is, then I would explain them to you," Nyx replied, moving closer. "Valeri formed deep bonds with chosen mates. The marking is both protection and declaration. It tells other females that you are claimed, and it tells you that I am willing to fight for that claim." "Fight?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Literally. Necessary." She took a sip of the wine, her amber eyes never leaving his. but there are other ways to reinforce a bond. The tension in the room was palpable. Marcus found himself drawn to her despite the alien nature of their situation. Skin seemed to shimmer in the soft light, and when she moved closer, he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. "Your species fascinates me," she continued, reaching up to trace the scar along his eyebrow. "Your adaptability, your courage in the face of the unknown. The way you stood perfectly still while I marked you, trusting me despite not understanding. Maybe I understood more than you think," Marcus said quietly, setting down his glass and covering her hand with his own. The kiss that followed was tentative at first, an exploration of differences and similarities. But when Nyx's arms wound around his neck and she pressed closer, it deepened into something primal and urgent. Her skin was warmer than human normal, and the bioluminescent patches along her throat pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "Is this what you meant by reinforcing the bond?" Marcus asked, his voice rough. "This is only the beginning," Nyx whispered against his lips. "If you're willing." Subcommander Vex Corrin watched the surveillance feed from Marcus's quarters with cold calculation. The humans bonding with Nyx Stellaris was proceeding exactly as she had anticipated. What the naive commander didn't realize was that her claiming of the humans served Vex's purposes perfectly. The Corellian raiders weren't just testing Valari defenses. They were preparing for a full-scale invasion, and Vex had been feeding them intelligence for months. The promised reward of her own sector. To rule was too tempting to refuse. The human captain's arrival had provided the perfect cover for her. Final act of sabotage, she activated her secure communication array, transmitting the joint patrol routes directly to her Corellian contacts. Soon, Nyx and her precious human would be eliminated, removing the last obstacle to Vex's ascension to power. The next morning, Marcus found himself in the co-pilot seat of a Valeri interceptor, racing through Zarian Prime's upper atmosphere alongside Nyx. The joint patrol was supposed to be routine, but the tactical displays showed something troubling. "Corellian signatures at Grid 77 Alpha," Nyx reported, her hands dancing over the bio-integrated controls. 3 heavy fighters, moving in attack formation. "That's directly along our patrol route," Marcus observed, frowning. Before Nyx could respond, energy blasts erupted around their ship. The interceptor shuddered. Under the impact, its crystalline hull crackling with discharge patterns. "Evasive maneuvers?" Marcus shouted, his hands instinctively moving to the backup controls. His piloting experience took over, rolling the ship away from the concentrated fire. "Shields at 40%, Nyx called out. "They're using focused plasma bursts military grade, not raider equipment." Another barrage struck their starboard engine. Warning lights flooded the cockpit as the ship lurched violently. Marcus fought the controls, but their trajectory was already committed. They were going down. "Emergency landing on Zirian's third moon," he announced grimly. "Hold on." The crash was controlled but brutal. In the sudden silence, both pilots took inventory of their situation. "Life support functional but limited," Nyx reported. "Communications are being jammed." "The jamming signature, it's not Corellian. This is Valeri technology." Nyx's amber eyes widened. "That's impossible. No Valeri would betray." "Someone did," Marcus interrupted. "Someone with access to our patrol routes and Valeri military equipment." As they gathered emergency supplies from their damaged ship, Nyx's bioluminescent markings pulsed in patterns Marcus was learning to interpret as deep anger. "Vex," she said finally. She was the only one who questioned our route assignment during the briefing. "Your sub-commander is working with the Corellians?" Marcus asked. "It appears so." Nyx's voice carried a deadly calm. "Among my people, betrayal of one's own kind is the highest crime. If we survive this, I will challenge her to ritual combat." Marcus shouldered his pack, scanning the desolate moonscape. "First we survive, then we deal with traitors." We as they set off toward the emergency beacon they'd detected on their scans. Both realized their bond had been tested by fire and emerged stronger. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Admiral Helena Cross stood rigid on the bridge of the UES Constitution, watching the tactical display with growing dread. The Krillian invasion fleet stretched across 3 sectors, their biomechanical warships pulsing with organic weapons that defied conventional military doctrine. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and the lines around her steel-gray eyes spoke of 3 decades commanding Earth's finest. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the third moon," Lieutenant Commander Park announced from the communications station. Helena's expression shifted to relief as Marcus's face appeared on the main screen. His uniform was torn and covered in lunar dust, but his green eyes burned with determination. Beside him stood Commander Stellaris, her violet skin marked with cuts, but her amber eyes fierce with resolve. "Admiral, we've confirmed the traitors." "Identity," Marcus reported, without preamble. "Subcommander Vex Corrin has been feeding our patrol routes to the Krillians. She's preparing to sabotage the planetary defense grid during their main assault." Helena's jaw tightened.
"How certain?"
"Are you, Captain?" "The jamming signature from our shootdown was Valeri technology," Nix interjected, stepping into the transmission range. "Only someone with command-level access could have orchestrated our ambush so precisely." "What's your operational status?" Helena asked. Marcus glanced at Nix, and Helena caught something in that look of connection that went beyond professional partnership. "We're mobile and have a plan, Admiral. But we'll need the fleet to create a diversion. The Krillian Command Dreadnought Bonecrusher is generating a tactical shield around their entire invasion force," Nix explained. "Our combined firepower can't penetrate it from the outside." Helena studied the alien commander. Despite the diplomatic briefings about Valeri territorial behavior, she'd never seen it in action. The way Stellaris positioned herself protectively near Marcus, the synchronized way they moved it was like watching a perfectly matched tactical unit. "You're proposing an infiltration mission," Helena realized. "Through their own hangar bays, expect chaos and battle," Marcus said. "They won't question a damaged fighter seeking emergency docking. Once we're inside, we upload a cascade virus into their bioneural network," Nix finished. "The Krillian ships are linked organically. Disable one, disable them all." Helena weighed the options. It was desperate, dangerous, and relied entirely on the unique bond between a human captain and an alien commander she barely knew. But conventional tactics had failed against Krillian biotechnology before. "You have a go, Captain. Godspeed." Hours later, the space around Zarian Prime erupted in violence. The combined Earth Coalition and Valeri defense fleets engaged. The Krillian invasion force in a desperate holding action, Helena watched from the Constitution's bridge as energy weapons and bioplasma exchanged fire in brilliant, deadly patterns. Their Park called out, pointing to a tactical screen. "Single Valeri fighter, engines trailing plasma," making for the Krillian dreadnought. Lena held her breath as the small ship limped through the battle zone, pursued by Krillian interceptors, who broke off their attack at the last moment. Just as Marcus had predicted, the enemy wanted prisoners to interrogate. Aboard the infiltrating fighter, Marcus felt Nix's hand grip his shoulder as they entered the Bonecrusher's hangar bay. The biomechanical walls pulsed with veined patterns that reminded him uncomfortably of the inside of some massive organ. "Our security teams are approaching," Nix murmured, her enhanced hearing picking up the clicking sounds of Krillian claws on metal decking. 12 hostiles, armed with neural disruptors. Marcus checked his sidearm, useless against Krillian bioarmor. "How do you want to play this?" Nix's bioluminescent markings began pulsing in rapid patterns he'd learned meant combat readiness. "Follow my lead, and trust the bond." What happened next defied everything Marcus thought he knew about coordinated combat. The moment they emerged from their fighter, he and Nix moved as a single organism. When she dodged left, he was already covering her right flank. When he rolled forward, she was providing suppressive fire from the exact angle he needed. Their bond had somehow synchronized their reflexes beyond what either could achieve alone. The Krillian security team, expecting to capture 2 separate prisoners, found themselves facing something unprecedented, perfectly coordinated fighting. Unit that anticipated each other's moves with supernatural precision. "The bioneural core is 3 levels up," Nix said as they reached the central lifts, not even breathing hard despite the intense combat. "I'm already uploading the virus parameters," Marcus replied. his tactical computer interfacing with the Krillian biosystems in ways their designers had never anticipated. Meanwhile, on Zarian Prime's surface, Vex Corin crouched over the sabotage device she'd spent months installing in the planetary defense grid. Her purple skin glistened with perspiration as she made the final connections. Soon the shields would fail, the orbital platforms would go dark, the Krillians would have a clear path to conquest. Her reward governorship of an entire sector would finally be within reach. The device sparked and died in her hands. "Vex Corin," came a voice that made her blood freeze. She turned to see a holographic projection of Nyx Stellaris, transmitted directly from the Krillian dreadnought. Even as a flickering image, the commander's presence was intimidating. "Impossible," Vex snarled. "You're supposed to be dead." "Your Krillian allies underestimated what bonded pairs can accomplish," Nyx replied coldly. "By the ancient laws of our people, I formally challenge you for the crime of treason against Zarian Prime." "You're too late." Vex lunged for the backup activation switch. The invasion fleet whirled through the command center's windows. The lights began going out across the massive Krillian warships. One by one, the biomechanical vessels went dark as Marcus's virus cascaded through their linked nervous systems. "Invasion is over," Nyx's image said with deadly calm. "Surrender now and face honorable combat. Resist further and be executed as a common traitor." As Valeri security forces surrounded her position, Vex Corin realized that her ambitions had died with the Krillian fleet. 6 months later, Admiral Helena Cross stood on the observation deck of the new joint Earth-Valeri space station orbiting Zarian Prime. The diplomatic ceremony below was historic, the first formal alliance between their species. Sealed not by treaties, but by the bond between a human captain and a Valeri commander. Marcus and Nyx approached, both wearing dress uniforms that somehow complemented each other despite their different origins. Helena noted how they moved in perfect synchronization, their bond having deepened even further since the battle. Admiral Marcus said, offering a crisp salute, "The joint training exercises are showing remarkable results. Integration between our tactical doctrines is exceeding all projections." "And the cultural exchange programs?" Helena asked Nyx. "Proceeding well," the Valeri commander replied. 3 more bonding pairs have formed between our species. It appears that Marcus and I were simply the first of many." Helena smiled, a rare expression on her weathered face. "Then perhaps we found something stronger than military alliances, Captain. Something that will last beyond any single conflict." As the ceremony concluded with the lighting of the eternal flame, a symbol that would burn as long as the alliance endured, Marcus and Nyx stood together, watching the stars. Their bond had not only saved 2 worlds, but had become the foundation for a new era of cooperation among the stars. "No regrets?" Marcus asked quietly. Nyx's bioluminescent markings pulsed in the slow, steady rhythm he'd learned meant perfect contentment. "None. We've created something beautiful, Marcus. Something that will outlast us both." Their kiss was witnessed by delegations from a dozen worlds, but in that moment they were simply 2 beings who had found something precious in the vast darkness between the stars. A love that had become the foundation of galactic peace.